I'm Erik Moses, Executive Director and CEO of the Fiesta Bowl organization, and this is The Rebound with Matt Doherty.
Welcome to The Rebound with Coach Matt Doherty.
Welcome to The Rebound. I'm Matt Doherty, and I'll be your host. On this show, we focus on the topic of leadership and overcoming adversity in an open and raw kind of way. We discuss failures and how to rebound from them. With me today is Erik Moses, the Executive Director and CEO of the Fiesta Bowl, former president of the Nashville Super speedway, former team president of the DC Defenders of the XFL, most importantly, a Carolina graduate. He did happen to go to law school at that school 8 miles down the road in a town called Durham. Erik, thank you for being on the show. Tell the audience a little bit more about the Fiesta Bowl and it being a nonprofit, because I don't think people really understand the concept of a nonprofit.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thanks for having me, Matt. It's been way too long since you and I have talked, but I appreciate your friendship and I appreciate the opportunity to join you on the Fiesta Bowl organization, which is really made up of 3 separate nonprofits, the primary being the Arizona Sports Foundation. Is really set up to not only organize, plan, and execute 2 major postseason college football games with the Guaranteed Rate Bowl and the Verbal Fiesta Bowl, but really the heart of our organization is giving back to the state of Arizona. And so we do that through our charitable efforts in the areas, targeting the areas of sports, education, and youth. And so it helps to be a nonprofit because the support that our fans and others and corporate partners that they provide to us helps us to then pour back into communities all across this state in ways that we've found to be, over the 53 years that we've been in existence, very impactful.
Well, let's talk leadership. Courage is an important aspect for a leader. You're considered one of the most influential Black executives in college sports. You embrace that. Tell us why you don't shy away from holding up that mantle.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, I'd rather be known as one of the most influential people in college sports, right? Regardless of my skin, gender, or anything else. But that gives me something to strive for, I guess. Look, I've always said that as a general principle that I want to show up as my authentic self in all settings, wherever I am. I've told younger people that I've talked to that, I would never take a job where I felt like I had to kind of check my Blackness at the door in order to be a part of that community, that organization, that institution. And thankfully, I haven't ever had to do that along my professional or personal journey. And so, yeah, representation matters. I think we all know that. And it's helpful for young people in particular to see folks who look like them, who come from similar backgrounds, in positions of power, in positions doing successful things and interesting things, so that it makes it a bit more accessible and attainable for them to dream big dreams. And that's what we want to inspire all young people to do. And so, yes, I stand on the shoulders of many people, those that look like me and those that don't, who have inspired me along my pathway, including here at the Fiesta Bowl, the literally thousands of men and women who took this startup bowl in 1971 out in Arizona, a state that many people like us that grew up on the East Coast know very little about, and decided they were going to, in a very short period of time, turn this organization into one of the most admired in college athletics and one of the top bowl games in the entire country. And so I gladly take on that mantle and hope that I'm doing something that will inspire some people in future generations.
You bring up a point. It's unfortunate we have to identify, Black executive. You wish it was just executive. And for what it's worth, I believe you're one of the top executives in all of sports. And you've earned that through your evolution as a leader in D.C. With the Sports Commission, and then with the Defenders, and then with the Nashville Super Speedway. Talk about that, and talk about checking my Blackness. You're black CEO, president of the Super Speedway in a traditionally white sport. How were you able to be your authentic self?
It's interesting, and I appreciate the question. I mean, I was the first African-American track president in NASCAR's 73-year history at that time when I accepted the job. And, I got asked the question, as you would imagine, a million times about how I felt about that. And my view is that, I've never set out to be any kind of pioneer necessarily in my career, but, some of that's in my blood. I mean, as you and I have talked about before, my grandmother's brother helped integrate the University of North Carolina in 1951, attending the law school, as one of the first two black men to ever enroll at that school. Yep. And so, some of that is in my lineage, and I gladly take it on. I loved my 2.5 years in NASCAR. And I did not have any issues whatsoever. I mean, I tell people oftentimes I think folks expect me to have a Jackie Robinson story, when Jackie broke into the big leagues and they were hurling insults at him and treating him a different way. I showed immediate respect, a thirst for knowledge about learning about NASCAR, embraced it and its heroes and its history in a way that was authentic. And I think people felt like it was authentic. And I had the good fortune of being able to bring back that beloved sport in a part of the country in Middle Tennessee where it had been absent at that level for almost 40 years. And so you love the thing that people love, you treat it with respect, and you bring it back to them. If you're a half decent person, you should be pretty well accepted. And I was, and I continue to be a part of that NASCAR family and will be for the rest of my life because of the experiences that I had, the people I worked with, and the genuine love and affection that NASCAR fans, old and new, have for that sport, which is such a unique sport.
We have about a minute and a half before we go to break. I've asked this question before. Ironically, of Steve Phelps, the president of NASCAR, managing change. He took over for the France family. As the president of NASCAR, you go into the Super Speedway as one of the first black CEO, president of track. How did you manage change when you go in there from the outside and you didn't have a background in NASCAR? Right. If you don't mind, in the next minute, just kind of give us some insight to managing that change.
Well, I'm somebody who is naturally intellectually curious. I want to learn about things. Let me give some credit to Steve Phelps. Steve Phelps had a 45-minute conversation with me on my cell phone before I was ever announced as taking that job. And he gave me the confidence to know that I would be supported in that sport, that yes, I would be the first, but I would be supported. As you recall, this was a very tumultuous time in our country after the George Floyd incident and all of the kind of uprisings that were happening across the country. And NASCAR was in a very interesting role where they were banning the Confederate flag at their tracks, et cetera. And so, my kids and my family were concerned about my safety going into Nashville into this sport. And I shared some of that with Steve in our conversation. And he assured me that the sport was moving in the right direction as it related to matters of race, and that I would be fully supported as one of their track presidents and someone who was helping them to bring that sport back in a very big market for them. And so, part of being new and bringing your leadership to new situations is knowing that you're going to have the support from the very beginning of the folks who are in positions to be able to help you.
That's powerful stuff. That is powerful stuff. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Let's go to break. And when we come back, Erik's going to discuss with us the greatest rebound of his career. The Rebound is sponsored by Sector Spider ETFs, a unique family of exchange-traded funds that divide the S&P 500 into 11 sector index funds. You can buy just the sectors you like or customize the S&P 500 by weighting the 11 sectors to meet your financial objective. Please visit them on the web at sectorspiders.com. That's Sector, SPDRS.com.
Alps Portfolio Solutions Distributor, a registered broker-dealer, is the distributor for the Select Sector Spider Trust.
Welcome back. Erik, tell us about the biggest rebound of your life, the moment where you may have failed, lost a loved one, made a bad decision, or had to pivot. What was it, and how did you rebound from it?
Well, it was. I will say, before coming here to take the helm at the Fiesta Bowl organization, it was the discontinuation of operations of the XFL. I had for a long time, as you know, been the sports commissioner in Washington D.C. for about 11 years, and had an opportunity to help to found the DC Defenders of the XFL. I call it XFL 2.0. That was in 2020. And I was overjoyed. I'd finally made it to the team side of sports, which is where many of us who operate in this industry want to be. I was working with 7 other team presidents and with people who were just excited and ambitious about standing up this new spring professional football league, and doing what we could in our markets to bring people football that was familiar, but that was different in a way that they would appreciate. You know, our rules were a little bit different. We had more fun and excitement, a little less stodgy than some people thought the NFL was. And I was overjoyed with being able to do that, and to do that in the town that I had lived in for 20 years, and that, you know, I felt very strongly about. Was it was a dream job. And to have that snatched away by a global pandemic that none of us could control, literally in a year. I started in April of 2019, and we shut down in April of 2020 as a result of the pandemic. When we were doing well, we were building a fan base. We had, you know, I'd done everything from, you know, start off at our office space was my dining room table, to finding our office space in downtown DC, to identifying our fans, to coming up with our mascot, which ended up being our shield, and seeing how little kids were creating the shields and people were painting their faces with the shield. And it was this whole thing, seeing our games on ESPN and all of that. And to have that taken away with very little warning, to say it was deflating would be an understatement. I had never been unemployed in my professional life. And so to be unemployed and during a global pandemic, with 2 kids and a wife, and wondering kind of what the world was going to look like and what my contributions to my family were going to be able to be, it was uncharted territory for me, and it was very hard to take. It was hard to take.
Tell us of an anecdotal story. Like I remember when I lost my job at North Carolina, Willie Scroggs, who worked in the athletic department, I drove a BMW 750 or 745 IL or LI. It was nice. And I lose my job, and my wife had a Navigator, and Willie came and took my car and gave me a replacement, a rental, which was a Ford Explorer, just standard, you know, nice car, but it wasn't a BMW. And I remember watching him drive down the road, and I had a box in my hand he gave me a box, and it had all my stuff, like CDs, my sunglasses, all the crap you have in a car. And I saw him drive away, and it was about 200 yards. Then the blinker came on, he made a right. And almost that's when it was official that I lost my job. Mm-hmm. Tell me of a moment like that for you with the Defenders. Was it a phone call? Was it packing a box? Was it telling your wife? What was that dark moment that you still remember vividly right now?
So I'll share the dark moment if you let me share the moment that brought all the light. So the dark moment was having suspended operations for several weeks while the pandemic was ongoing, and being responsible for all of the people that we hired on our team. I hired every single person on our staff, and I was the leader that they were looking for answers. And I remember we, after not really having much interaction with the league office, all got an email that said we were having a conference call. It was all staff mandatory on a Friday. I believe it was April 13th, Friday the 13th. And we jumped on the call, and essentially the president of business operations told us the league was shutting down and we were all terminated immediately. And there were more words than that, but there wasn't a lot after that. And then the phone went dead. And I remember thinking, how am I going to explain to these 20-somethings that took a chance on this startup league to start their careers? You know, my VP of comms who was literally commuting from Delaware every day to Washington, D.C. for this job. And all of the folks who worked for me, the personal relationships and professional relationships I used to get sponsors and our office space and all of those things. How was I going to explain this to people? And I remember feeling really helpless, but knowing that I had a sense of responsibility and obligation to my staff and to others who had worked with us to build what we had. And, just started calling people one-on-one and letting them know I'm here. I'll write recommendations, I'll reach out to people, I'll do referrals, I'll help you, figure out your unemployment with the city of Washington because I had, deep connections there, all of that stuff. But the helpless feeling of being dumped on your head after the thing that was supposed to be, your dream job, that was like no other thing that I've ever experienced in my life.
How did you rebound out of that? I mean, I think sometimes when there's, the fight or flight, right? It's kind of an emergency. There's a fire. You've got to put it out. You get that energy, you get that rush. And then, you're worried about other people, which is a sign of great leadership. And then there's that moment when it's kind of done and calm. And you probably think about what just happened. And you get to look at the damage. And it's just you. Who was there by your side at that time and helped you get through that storm?
Well, two people. At the time, my wife at the time, telling her, I remember, I tend to take things in stride. I don't, it's kind of part of the thing that allows me to be in leadership positions in sports entertainment, because as you know, with live events, there's always something that you didn't plan for. There's always some contingency or something that happens, and you have to be very calm in order to make the right decisions and to roll with the punches. And I've always prided myself on doing that. But I remember when I had to explain to her that the league was done and that essentially I was unemployed, I remember breaking down and explaining that to her and my kids being around, my boys at the time. And I don't say that they had never seen me cry before, but probably not like that. And
Wow.
And that was tough. I will tell you, though, that what came after that was really for me a recognition and a verification that I've been doing something right in my life in terms of my relationships. The very next day after the league was announced that it was going bankrupt and closing down, I got a call from a friend whose son and my oldest son went to middle school together. He's a successful lawyer, has his own law firm. He called me and he said, "Erik, I'm so sorry to hear about what happened to the league. You were doing such a great job, and I just want you to know I'm here for you." And I said, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And he said, and so here's what we're going to do. You're going to come work for me at my law firm, and we'll figure out kind of how long that takes while you figure out what's next for you and everything. And that's that's going to happen. And I remember saying, I'm flattered that you would think about that, but you have an intellectual property litigation firm, and I am neither an intellectual property lawyer nor a litigator. And so how am I going to add value here? And he said, that's not what's important, and that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is you're a friend, you're a smart guy, you're a successful person who has been dealt a bad hand through no fault of your own, and I'm going to help you. And we'll figure out what that looks like and all of that. And I remember it gets me choked up thinking about it even now, because it was such a caring thing and a thoughtful thing to do for someone who wasn't my best friend in the world, but who I have a high degree of respect for, and even higher now, and will be a lifelong friend. But to think that people in your life have been affected by you in a way that would make them want to do something like that for you when they don't have to. And I was benefiting way more than he was benefiting in that relationship. It renewed my faith in humanity.
How has that impacted you going forward? When I say this, when I lost my job at North Carolina, I remember who called me and I remember who didn't.
Yep.
Were there some people that didn't call you that you thought they would?
Yeah. Not a whole lot. I will tell you, I was humbled and flattered and overjoyed with the outpouring of support that I received in the days and weeks after that. I had students that I had taught at Georgetown in the sports industry management program where I taught for about 10 years. I had students that, frankly, I didn't even remember that well, who reached out to me and said, hey, I heard about this. If I can be helpful in any way, please let me know. It was such an interesting time because you're in the depths of this hell, that you didn't control, and all this disappointment around what could have been and wasn't allowed to flourish and all that. But then this outpouring of love and support comes to you, and it almost made, frankly, it did make everything okay, right? It just made me feel like, okay, this too shall pass, and there are people out there who are going to support me. There were some folks, and I will say, some executives at the league that I never heard from, that I was very disappointed that didn't call and say, hey, you did a great job. This didn't have anything to do with you or whatever. Something like that, like I did for my staff.
Right.
When I called each and every one of them and spent time talking with them and emailing with them and making certain that they were okay. I was a bit disheartened by the fact that I didn't hear from some of those folks until I got the NASCAR job, and then and my name was on ESPN, and then
the phone rings.
Some of those people, yeah.
Then the phone rings.
That was really interesting. But you take note of those things. As they say, when people show you who they are, believe them.
That's right. When people show you who they are, believe them. Erik, thank you for joining us today for a great perspective on leadership, managing the high highs, the low lows. For those of you watching this show, we all deal with setbacks, failure, and loss. I encourage you to rebound. I encourage you to learn and grow. If you would like to contact me, you can do so by going to my website, dohertycoaching.com. That's DOHERTY.com. Thank you for tuning in.
Leadership is a learned behavior. You're a leader whether you're a parent, a coach, a business owner, or a friend. We all lead in some way, shape, or form. Thanks for listening. I welcome any and all feedback. You can reach me at dohertycoaching.com.